Good morning and welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and I'm happy to be here to be talking about book marketing, publishing, and the business of being an author. You're welcome to join us live any Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, simply by going to newshelves.com/FAF. Or if you cannot join us live, you're also welcome to email in your questions to info@newshelves.com, and we answer those questions live on Friday. And you can catch the replay over on YouTube, which is New Shelves Books on YouTube. So we have some questions that have been sent in, and I will be jumping right into those today. And then, of course, we do take those questions live. So the first question I had was, when working with a publisher or pitching to publishers, can you work with more than one? So I think it's really important. This is more for authors who aren't going through an agent. This is authors who are pitching their own books to traditional press or smaller press, or maybe they're working with a hybrid publisher, different things like that. And the question is, can you pitch more than one and can you work with more than one? So of course you can pitch more than one publisher and see if they're interested in your manuscript. You do need to kind of check out their rules of um, querying and submissions so you know what their rules are. But once you submit it, yes, typically it's open where you can continue submitting in other places. However, when it comes time to actually work with a publisher on your manuscript to publish, whether it be um, a traditional publisher or a hybrid publisher, really doesn't matter. Once you have decided to work with a publisher, it's one publisher per book, because when you sign a publishing agreement or contract, that contract typically is for the rights to publish and print that specific title. So you can't enter into an agreement, which is exclusive. You're giving exclusive rights to print and publish for a certain term. You cannot enter into a exclusive agreement with publisher one and publisher two. That would actually put you, in breach of both contracts. So that would not. So you can pitch multiple publishers, but once it comes time to work with a publisher, you need to pick one publisher and work with them. And if you're running into the case where so many people want your book, especially if it's traditional press, so many people want your book, well, that is a great place to be in. And so congratulations if that happens to be the case. Jane's question really followed up on that one, kind of. So I want to answer that next. And that question is, what happens if I get an agent, but my agent is not selling my book? Like, I've got an agent, but my book is still not selling. And there's a couple of things that could be going on here and things that I would consider. If you queried an agent and you pitched them your book and they signed you, they said, yeah, I love this project, and they signed you for that book. One of the questions that you should be asking your agent is, okay, I do have this book, but I'm working on my next big thing, and making sure that they're open or willing to take a look at the next book. So even if you are, I mean, unless you have one single book in you and that's it, and most of the time agents don't want to work with someone who only has one book, unless you're a celebrity or something like that. So they most of the time are looking for someone who can, sell again and again. So you should be working on your next project. And sometimes your current project just isn't hot on the market. There have been trends that have happened where certain titles were really popular for a while and then they died out quickly. And so agents would take on an author because they're like, wow, this is selling, this is trending, this is hot. And then 3 months later, it was no longer selling, it was no longer trending. Something happened, some social event, something in the news that made elements of the book no longer work. It was just not as popular anymore, whatever it may have been. Now, they're still your agent and they're still going to try to pitch that book, but sometimes it's just not going to sell. So, what do you as an author do? Well, number one, hopefully you're working on your next idea or next project, or you're brainstorming with your agent on what your next project might be. Because sometimes, and I've seen this happen multiple times, the project that you queried an agent with and actually signed with an agent for may not be the project that sells. It may be the next book that you write that sells first. And I've seen this many, many times. And if we actually see, not necessarily agent wise, but if we look at a lot of authors who are doing very well right now, most of them will tell you that the book they published first was not the first book they wrote. Some of them have been publishing for years and are now going back and pulling out old projects and refining them now that they have honed their skills, and it's different. And so sometimes that happens when you get an agent, even as your first project was good, but if you keep writing, your second project may be what sells. Now, I also have to mention there may be a case of maybe your agent is not working very hard for you, or maybe it's just not a good fit. Maybe you queried an agent who did love your project but didn't have the connections to sell your project. What do I mean by that? Well, yes, an agent, technically a licensed agent who has gone through the proper channels, can pitch any editor and they can pitch any publisher, technically, having connections and having people recognize your name, your email, having networked with people makes a difference in them. Just like agents are looking through so many different emails and queries, so too are editors and publishers looking through lots and lots of queries. And so, while any agent who's properly channeled can submit, it does help when that agent has worked with an editor or a publisher before, if they have contacts, if they've networked, because that way they kind of get to the top of the pile because they say, oh, I recognize that name. You may have queried an agent who loved your project that is women's fiction, and it is women's literary fiction, and it's very much in that wheelhouse. And they love the project, so they signed you, but most of their work is in children's fiction or picture books. Now, they've sold a project here or there that wasn't, but that's what their kind of niche is. And that means they may not have the contacts. In that case, sometimes it's okay to break up with your agent to say, hey, this was wonderful. I think that I need to move on. Of course, there's contracts and you have to look into all of that, but sometimes you'll break up with your agent. Sometimes your agent has the contacts, but maybe you're low priority for them or you feel like you are. And at that time, it's really important to have a very honest conversation with them of, I feel like maybe my project is not getting as much attention or it's not being pitched as much. May I ask what your submissions are and what I can do to support you? And I want you to note two things. Number one, I led with an I feel statement, not you're not pitching my book or you're not doing that. I feel, because that makes it not an accusation, but my feeling. And my feelings cannot be argued with. You can say that, well, that's not true. I am giving you just as much attention, but you can't say, I don't feel that way, because I do. So leading with those I feel statements very much open up with, you can't argue with that, number one. And number two, it's not as aggressive. And then at the end, I mentioned, what can I do to support you and to support my project? So you're also showing that you want to be a team player. And sometimes that works. And sometimes you have a very honest conversation and they say, look, this wasn't working for me, or we've gotten feedback 3 times that this needs to change. And you've really pushed back on that. And I'm not able to continue pitching or bring it back to those editors if we're not going to make those changes in the manuscript. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it'll come to a point where you and the agent just aren't a good fit, whether it be personality wise or whatever it may be. It may just not be a good fit and you may break up, and that's okay. But I think it's important that if you're feeling like you have an agent or you get an agent and your book isn't selling, looking at your next project or looking at why it's not selling. Is it not a good fit? Does the agent not have the right contacts? Are you and the agent not really working together? And then finding what that root cause is so that you can decide to either walk away or work on it. And I think that's really important. Exactly. Danielle's saying, I asked my agent for feedback. How can I help you serve my efforts better? And that is really important to keep the channels open, because an agent who feels like you're willing and able to work that you are willing to make changes. I've seen great things happen that way. I've seen agents come back and say, look, your book is really good, but you have not been marketing yourself at all. And if you're not marketing yourself, publishers do look at that. It's not the single focus that publishers look at, but publishers do look at how much authors are doing for themselves. Are they on social media? Are they going to conferences? Are they networking? And they absolutely look at that, especially if they're on the edge. If they're looking at manuscript A, manuscript B, and they're pretty, like they like them both, but one author is really out there networking, marketing, and the other one isn't, they look at that. And agents sometimes get that feedback. Not always, but sometimes they do. But that can be one of those things that you can improve on. You can do differently. But you don't know if you don't ask. So keeping those lines of communication open are really important. And sometimes, like I said, it's just a bad fit. Sometimes you just need to break up, and that's okay. This happens sometimes. So that's on that. That's kind of, I thought it was interesting to me that I got a question about both publishers and then agents with, selling manuscripts at the same time. So I wanted to cover that. And Neil saying, I've recently heard that once you've written 2 to 3 works on a topic, it locks you in as that type of writer. What are your recommendations for diversifying your writing portfolio? So I think the reason why, like locking you into that type of project, one of the reasons why is because we know that that grows your following. Same thing I've talked about with why you might want a pen name with algorithms. It's not that you can never write anything else. It's that once you start to develop relationships in the publishing industry, again, your literary agent may only focus on certain genres. They may only do fiction, and then you want to write nonfiction, and they're like, not my thing. You might need to get an agent or submit directly for your nonfiction to publishers that accept direct submissions and keep your agent for your fiction. But also know that your audiences won't cross over, that your women's fiction audience may not want to read self-help that's nonfiction. And that's why I think you kind of hear that, is that you're locked in. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do think you have to understand that if you are writing multiple genres, multiple different projects, just know that you're going to have to market each of them separately, that you cannot stand on, well, look how well my books did over here when it's women's fiction. If you're going over to nonfiction, it's a different audience. So you're basically starting your reputation, your audience from scratch over on this side. And that is why I think it's so important that it's not that you can't switch, it's that if you switch genres, you have to be very, very smart about it. And it's hard to maintain genre hopping, meaning if you write a fantasy novel and then you write, women's fiction, and then you decide to do a picture book, and then you're going to do nonfiction, that's really hard to do because you don't take your audiences with you. So you're constantly starting fresh. And agents and publishers and different things like that are looking for someone who can continue to build with an audience, because they build an audience, they build a name, which means they build their sales. And that is why it's kind of hard. So I don't think it's that you are locked in so much as hopping around can be very difficult. And it's better to be mindful about how you're writing and releasing, and making sure that you're cultivating the right support system and audience for those, rather than hopping all around. That makes it very, very difficult. Let's see, Caroline, we got a BookBub deal in June. The goal is selling more books, not a series. How can I best take advantage of this opportunity? Also, I've recorded audio. It is available wide distribution worldwide. So if you have a BookBub deal, you may consider, if you can, discount your Audible book through ACX or on Audible, then you may consider discounting your audiobook at the same time to kind of piggyback on those sales. But if you're trying to get read through for a non-series, a standalone, I think it's all about your marketing and your back matter. So your back matter is going to be crucially important for 2 reasons. this is one of your best opportunities to grow your mailing list. And when you get a mailing list, when you get their emails, you can then promote the other standalone books from this author. So you can say, if you loved About Last Night, make sure that you read this that's got the same, this trope and this trope and this trope that's the same. Or if you love this, this, and this about this book, this should be your next read because it's got this, this, and this. So getting emails is one of the best things you can do, especially always, but especially if you have a standalone opportunity for promotion and you have other books that are not a series. Getting emails in your follow-up marketing campaigns and email campaigns are one of the most important things you can do, in my opinion. And we've talked about how to get people's email. Well, of course, you can just say, sign up to get notifications, but people want to be paid for their email. So offering a free ebook, a short story, a abridged audiobook, offering them something and making sure that you're collecting emails in the back matter. The other thing you have an opportunity to do is not only to collect emails, but to promote other books in the back matter. So whether that be you find one book, your single book that is closest to the book that you're promoting or selling, and you add in the back matter, if you love this, then you're going to love this book. Read on for a preview and have your first chapter, the entire first chapter, in the back matter of the book. And at the end, you have a link that says continue reading. And continue reading takes them to a sales link on, where they can buy the ebook of the other one. I do recommend that you consider, it can be full price, or you might consider discounting that next book for a very limited time, like just for a week or something like that at the same time, so that the read through might be higher if they're really hooked on the author and there's a lot of books that they have, then maybe they'll go on at full price to the other books. So thank you. And then that is one of the things. The other thing is, if you don't want to do that, you don't want to lead into a specific book, you can just have essentially like a catalog at the end of the book where you have the book cover, the description, and then a buy link. Pages of that. This is book number 1, and it's got the call to action, and then it's got the buy link, and then book number 2, and you have that, giving them the opportunity to see what other books this author has written that might be in their wheelhouse. And I think that's going to be one of your most important things, again, is collecting the reader information so you can market to them again, and giving them the opportunity and hand feeding them the next book that you hope they buy and read. And by doing that and giving them, a chapter that you think is very close to the one they just finished. So assuming they liked it, they would go on to do it, or giving them kind of like your catalog in the back. And that may mean that you have to update your back matter and actually update that before your BookBub. But since a lot of people, it depends on if you've done your own formatting in Atticus or Vellum, or if you're paying someone, that does definitely change that up a little bit. But updating your back matter is typically always a good idea, whether you have a big promotion or not. Just a promotion can make that a little bit more something that's, you want to focus on sooner. It's making it a little bit more urgent. All right, let's see. Marcia in Maine. I love Maine. Let's see. 2 days ago, I listed my nonfiction arc on NetGalley. I have just one potential review at this point. What experience and advice do you have for attracting reviews on NetGalley? I plan to promote the NetGalley's widget link via my own social platforms, email, and website, but I thought I'd get more reviews from NetGalley reviewers pool. So NetGalley, as we've talked about before, is very helpful. However, if you just listed it 2 days ago, I mean, a lot of people haven't even looked at it. So I would say that you probably need a good month on NetGalley to get the full view of eyes. Like, some people will only look at the beginning of the month and the end of the month. Some people look on a certain day every week, but typically people who are reviewing, and some people will just, when they review a book or when they read a book, they'll go back for another one. But a lot of people kind of have a habit of when they go and look for new books that they might be interested in. So I would at least at minimum give it a week, but probably closer to a month before you get the full preview of what you'll get from NetGalley on their own. But the other thing to consider is that NetGalley does give you the opportunity for sales, but so does Amazon. Or NetGalley gives you the opportunity for reviews, like Amazon gives you the opportunity for sales. When you put your book up on Amazon, it puts it up there and available, and people can search, find, and buy it. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily promoted. And NetGalley, in a smaller scale, a much smaller scale, can be kind of the same way. Is that when you pay for a NetGalley feature promotion, it means your book is available for review and that it's up there, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's getting promoted. So promoting it yourself with the widget and different things, I think is definitely smart. Do that, but also NetGalley has some opportunities where you can pay for different promotions for them. You may even consider doing something like a Facebook ad, running a $20 Facebook ad saying, this book is free on NetGalley, just like we would do kind of like for a book funnel promo or something like that. Running a small ad directly to NetGalley talking about your book and telling people how they can read it for free might be a way to get more people over there. But just because it's up on NetGalley, yes, that's a area where people hang out and look for books to review, but there are a lot of books up there now. And so your marketing, your packaging has to be on point. Your cover, your description have to be something that people want to read. So I'm sure you've already looked at that and done that, but that's definitely something that matters. And then it has to be a topic that people are interested in. So if your topic is niche, your reviewer pool will be smaller, just like your sales pool will be smaller. So I think that's one of the things to kind of keep in mind is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get reviews. It gives you the opportunity for reviews. And definitely a week to a month is what you need to even get a full idea of what you might get from NetGalley. Just even getting anyone to pick up the book in just 2 days is actually a good sign. So don't give up yet. And there are more ways that you can kind of look and try to tap into those reviews. Yes. So much talk about what's happening with libraries and banning books. They're actually, there's a lot going on for banning books in different states and libraries and schools, and also talk of laws being passed where books cannot be hard banned. So where they can be requested removed for specific things, but they cannot be banned across states or counties or countries in different things like that. So it is something that has been ongoing for over a year. If you actually looked at the books that have been banned, the ALA that we were talking about before, I think it was before we hopped on the call, the American Library Association has a conference coming up, and one of the things that they talk about often is banned books, and they actually track the data of, how many banned books are going on and how many ban requests happen, and the percentage and the number of banned books has just been growing exponentially. It's kind of crazy. I credit part of that simply because of the internet, because now it's a lot easier to hear about books and then ask for banning and put in forms and to make noise about it, but also because the data is being tracked now. We also have a lot more books being published than we did 10 years ago. And so there are a lot more books for people to dislike. And it is definitely something to be aware of, and certainly look into where you live. I live in New York where not much gets banned here, but there are certainly states and counties and different places where a lot of things get banned. Um, it's kind of crazy to me. I can understand it a little bit, not allowing certain books to be in school libraries or children libraries, but most of the books being banned are not, it's not adult books being banned from children's libraries. A lot of it is because of the themes, because they are inclusive. Some of them are, some of them do have topics that may be a little heavy for certain ages, but a lot of them, it's simply, the one of the books that made the list was about a little boy who had two dads and different things like that. And that is the reality of our kids' lives now. And I think that Well, I won't get into the politics of it, but I do just think that um, some the idea of banning books, I think, was originally, and I hate the idea of banning anything, but I think originally the idea was sometimes there is a line when it comes to schools and children. Um, for example, I would not want a Karma Sutra book in my child's middle school library. That's just not something I personally would prefer. And I think that's what it originally it should have been, would have been, but now it's just changed so much to something different to I don't agree with this or it doesn't follow my politics or religion or whatever it may be. And so it's become very different than that. Um, and that's where I think the problem is that when we do cross over those lines, and we're seeing that in a lot of states and a lot of places, and we're seeing the numbers go up. And that is why I do appreciate that ALA does tend to track that information. They actually track which books have the highest number of ban requests. And I always like to look at that. I look at that to see like what books people are so upset by, and a lot of times it's one of those things where um well, like I said, you can make your own opinions. I won't get into that. But I just think it is kind of absolutely crazy. And I do appreciate that ALA tracks that information for us and that they share it and they make it available because I think that's pretty awesome. Um, and appreciate that there. Yes. So someone's mentioning that on our YouTube channel recently, we did just post a tutorial of how to create attribution links. So one of the questions that I get asked, possibly well, not the most often, but it's a very common question is, how do I track my Facebook ads? How do I track my ads outside? You know, if I'm using Pinterest or different things, how do I track this if I'm getting any sales? And attribution links from Amazon is one of the best way to track your Amazon sales with non-Amazon traffic. So when you're not using Amazon ads and things like that. And attribution links is the key to that. They are not new. They came out a year and a half ago now. So it's not brand new, but we hadn't done a tutorial on how you create them. And I'm always surprised by how many authors I speak to who aren't using attribution links. And so I set them up for most of my clients, but I actually hadn't done a video on it. So I did do a attribution video, which is available on our YouTube channel, which is just New Shelves Books. And I did link to it in the chat. We're still hearing a lot about Facebook ads and whether or not they're working. I think a lot of that is I'm sure you've noticed Facebook and Meta have introduced an AI tool, and there is a lot of chatter that that perhaps might be messing with your ads, which goes back to what I kind of said last week is that yes, people who are using their AI tools for ads are suffering the most because they're not controlling it as much. And so I think we'll see continued shifts there. A lot of platforms, not just Meta, Zoom, a lot of platforms, Adobe is starting to integrate AI and it's changing things and it's creating bugs and it's moving algorithms and all sorts of things. So I think we'll kind of see that in the foreseeable future as things change and adjust and shift. But attribution links are very helpful. I will say that when using an attribution link, and I did get this question earlier this week, is how much can we rely on an attribution link? So the attribution link tracks your traffic outside of Amazon on Amazon sales. And one of the questions that I've gotten is how much do we trust the attribution links? Like we've talked about even on Amazon ads, how Amazon ads give you data, but you do get like some lift and some sales that don't necessarily come from the ads, but they correlate or come because of the lift you got from the ads. And so how much do you trust an attribution link? And mostly what I've seen and what other people have seem to agree with me that attribution links will track anywhere from 40 to 60% of your sales. So when you're looking at it, it's likely that that ad or whatever you're using that link in is probably getting about double of the sales that you're seeing directly from that link if you're running Facebook ads or something like that. And the reason for it, number one, is that it's Amazon tracking from outside sources. And so it's a helpful tool, but it's not, it's not definite. It is a tool that can be used and considered, but it's not the be all end all. Also, if you're using these attribution links for something like, I don't know, a Pinterest ad, or you're using it for a Facebook ad or something like that. If I'm on my Facebook app and I click on the link for an ad, it will pull it up in my Facebook sphere. It'll pull it up in the app. Well, if I want to buy something, I don't do it from the Facebook app. I do not log into my Amazon account from my Facebook app. Now you can, it's possible, and some people will log into everything and do it that way. And then you have people who will not, that they will open an ad or something in Facebook. They'll see something they like, and then they close that down and they go to the Kindle app, or they go onto their web browser and they sign into their Amazon account there where they feel more secure, and they order it there. And the link doesn't track that because it can't. And I think we see that a lot, especially with social media ads. So again, it's a helpful tool, but it's something you have to kind of consider as a piece of the puzzle, looking at all the data. Do your overall sales go up? Has your ranking gone up? Has your exposure gone up? Not just looking at the numbers. If you see, I got 100 clicks and only 3 sales, number one, conversion from non-Amazon traffic to sales is going to be lower than we would hope for direct conversion from an Amazon ad where people are hooked up and expecting money. But let's just say you got 3 sales and 100 clicks, and people are like, man, this is not paying for itself. But if you consider, it's more likely that you got 6 sales from 100 clicks. Now that's a guesstimate though. You have to go and check your ad dashboard and see if your sales did increase that much, and look at different things. And I joke with people when I get on calls when we're reviewing ads and things like that. I joke with people that I have to first open up my 27 tabs or whatever it is. But it's the truth, because to really look at ad success, I'm not just looking at, okay, well, Facebook told me you got this many clicks, so this is how successful it is. I'm looking at, let's pull up your Facebook ad data so we can look at your Facebook ad data, your clicks, your cost per click, your click-through rate, and your success, and how many people you're reaching, what demographic you're reaching. That's just on Facebook. But then I'm also going to be looking at your attribution links, because then I want to see, Facebook said you got this many clicks and it costs this much. Great. How is that, how's the attribution showing? Is that traffic converting? Is it working? And then I'm going to open up a tab in KDP reports, or whatever reports it may be, Ingram Spark. And then I'm going to open up that tab so that I can also look there to say, okay, Facebook says this, attribution says this, but did your sales overall go up? And did they go up just as much as attribution shows, or did they go up more than that? And that's just for KDP. Now, if you were doing a ad that was going to like a landing page that had your book listing at Kobo and Barnes and Noble and all those other places, well, then we'd need a tab for draft to digital as well. Or if you're selling directly through Kobo and Barnes and Noble, we would need a Kobo and Barnes and Noble tab. So you can see where we really do have to create this whole picture. I made the analogy that it's a little bit like a crime scene board, where you like have the center, which is like your sales, and then you've got the red lines going out to all the different places, because that's really what it is. That's what effective marketing often is that you are looking at many different avenues of income and sales. You're looking at data to try to decipher where it came from. And it's not impossible. It's not something that you can't do, but it is something that you either have to learn or innately be in or do often, because it's not, it's a little bit like a second language. Lots of people learn a second language, but you have to take the time to do it and the effort to do it. It's not something you'll just, like, I'm just going to look at my sales and look at them once a year, and you'll know whether or not your ads work. That's not how it works. Now, at the same time, I don't think you need to look at your sales every day. In fact, I often encourage authors not to look at sales and ad data every day. because it can become an obsession, number one. But also, so much of the reporting takes 48 to 72 hours minimum to actually sync up. So you may be looking at your sales on Amazon one day and you are just flipping out because, oh my gosh, usually I get this many sales and I have no sales today. Or you're looking at your ad data and you're going, well, this is costing too much. I'm going to turn this off. And we make these knee-jerk decisions and emotional decisions because we're tracking things day by day, and it can actually be very counterproductive. So I very often will say, look once a week, look every other week, look at a month. So when I look at ad data, I typically will look at the past week performance, the past month performance, then last month's performance, and then a 90 days performance. So I'm looking for improvement along the way. I'm looking for, were there any trends? I'm looking to see if, hey, remember when we had a call last month? And I want to just go back and see if that ad data has changed, if we've gotten more data because we looked early in the beginning of this month. So I want to go back and look. And sometimes it does because data, all of it, sales data, ad data, it can take a while to all sync up everywhere. So it's one of those things to look at. Let's see. No, Richard, there aren't two. It's up and running through September 1st. They just wanted you to optimize different things. Oh, yes, Amazon ads, and you had to choose pictures. So for Amazon ads now, if you're doing a sponsored, not sponsored product, those don't have photos, sponsored brand ads. So for a sponsored brand ad, you now have to have your own photo or creative to go in. It can't have words, but it's just an image. And so that now is a little bit different because then you have to, do you use stock photos? Do you use a photo of the books lined up? And it depends, and you might have to try it out and try different things. And that's also another thing that people don't always tell you about ads is that you're making guesses. You're making educated guesses. You're looking at data, but you're making guesses in the beginning to gather data so that you can read it, so you can make more educated guesses. But there's no like if like I said, 1 + 1 doesn't necessarily equal 2 in marketing, and it would be really nice if it did, except for I'm terrible at math, so it kind of works that sometimes 1 + 2 = 27, and it is definitely one of those things where you have to have a open and creative mind when looking at these things. Yes, and sometimes there are good and bad months. Richard's mentioning this, and I think it's really important. There are certain trends. Now, sometimes trends happen across the book industry, and sometimes they happen by the genre, and sometimes it's just your book. So, for example, we know that about 40% of books are purchased between November and January. Well, that makes sense, right? It's the gift buying holiday season. So most people's sales will be up from November to January. Not so much if you have a nonfiction book about losing weight or being healthy or certain topics, not so much, but overall book sales do go up November through January. Now, we also see certain slumps. For example, May is often a slump month. Why? May is when graduations happen, both high school and graduation, depending on what area you're in. So people are busy, they're traveling. It's when it starts to get warmer and people get out in their gardens and maybe they're reading a little bit less. It is the time when all, and I do mean all of the school activities, every concert, every field trip, they all start happening in May. Every field day, it's suddenly like, hey, forget your full-time job. Your full-time job is now trying to keep track of your children's end of school year activities. It is absolutely insane. People are just busy. It's a weird kind of month, but June June and July can often be high months for certain genres, specifically women's fiction, romance, fantasy tend to be higher right there. Thrillers are often sold more often throughout the summer months in travel because they do very well in airports or as people are traveling. People like to have a single book they can finish on vacation. So sometimes you see lists there. Children's books. Yes, children's books do very well November to January around the holidays, but some of the best months for children's book sales also coincide with the Easter holiday. So right there in April. Now, a lot of people think that book sales are going to skyrocket for children around summer reading. That's not necessarily the case. And when it is, it's typically not going to be in May and June. The sales are going to increase as they get closer to the end of the school year at July and August. When people realize, oh, hey, that reading log we have for school, need to, get that done. Or we've done our vacation, you've sat around long enough, it's time to read now. And so we see different shifts like that. And sometimes it's an anomaly. Sometimes it's just like, hey, this was just a really bad month for book sales, and we don't necessarily know why. That is why it's important and it's smart to be in groups. It's important. I try to share it here on Free Advice Friday when I'm seeing slumps or trends. And part of that is to give you information, which gives you empowerment as an author. And I'm in a lot of author groups. I moderate a very, very large women's publishing group. It's over, I think it's about 130,000 members now. So I see a lot of posts and people are like, my sales are down or anyone else's. I'm in a lot of author groups. I'm a newsletter junkie for the publishing industry. I see when people talk about these things, and it's good to know that. Number one, to know if it's just you, your ads, your marketing, if it's industry wide, if something's going on. So you do have to kind of watch those, and it will depend on your genre, sometimes even your book. I will say we have an election year, and you would think that people would want to escape into books around election time because it can be a little overwhelming with all of the politics. But what actually happens is it's a little bit of that like car wreck syndrome where they can't tear their eyes away from it. And what happens oftentimes in a voting year, reading slumps will happen in October and into November because people are just so focused on certain things. So you may see a slump around election time. It typically picks up about a week or two after election once people have kind of come to grips with whatever is coming for the next couple of years. And so it's one of those things that we think that people will want to escape into fictionalized worlds or do other things, but a lot of times they don't. And I've seen that for multiple elections. I would expect to see it this year. I expect at the end of October into November. I'm recommending that people are publishing books this year. Stay away from October and November. Just stay away from it because your book will not be the focus. There are a lot of other things that are going to be trending, pushing out on social media, on algorithms and things like and so, it's just one of those things, but it is good to kind of keep your pulse on it and know specifically, look at your books year to year. That is the fabulous thing about data and reports. Well, did you have a slump in your own sales last May? Look and watch that and see kind of what might have happened because it can depend drastically. And that's why I do say, don't just look at a week. Don't just look at this month. Look at last month. Look at the month before. Look at 90 days to get an idea. Is your book marketing or your ads really not working, or is this month an anomaly? Should we wait it out or should we not? Richard, I'll email you. It doesn't. I looked at the dashboard before I got on. Oh, guidepost book might be because after the election, people might be turning more to their spiritual um guidances. So that might work, but it wouldn't be my top choice usually. Let's see. Should I try to do major newspapers as a release? Do they even look at self-published projects? Some newspapers do look at self-published projects, like if we're looking for reviews or different things like that. I do have something on the New Shelves blog that's all about press releases, which you can write yourself and you can distribute them very cost effectively through aggregators. That might be something you could do, but I would be focusing on newspapers where you or your story has a direct connection. That's where you're going to get the most lift from. When I ask a reader to post a review of my book, I mention that they can post the same review at Amazon and Goodreads. Would it make more sense to recommend and send the link to, say, Barnes and Noble or some other place instead of Goodreads, since Amazon and Goodreads are managed by Amazon? I always tell people the way that I love to do it is to say, I'd love to have a review. You can copy it and paste it on any of the sites below and then link to all of them. Link to Amazon, Goodreads, Kobo, Barnes and Noble, because that gives them the information, the opportunity, but you're not asking list it everywhere. You are saying you are welcome to copy and paste it on any or all of the sites below, and you just put it there. I think that a lot of us will push towards Amazon because we know that's where most books are sold and it just makes sense. But Goodreads also makes sense because even if I buy my books at Barnes and Noble or I buy my books at Kobo, a lot of readers use Goodreads. And even though Amazon owns Goodreads, so that information does show up like a Goodreads review, now they're starting to play and beta test how that will connect. They're showing not only reviews on Goodreads, but we're also seeing on some listings are testing it out, how many books have sold in the last month. Like they're giving that information on some of the listings. It's very interesting. But Goodreads is where a lot of readers go. And so that makes sense. And oftentimes Goodreads will have more reviews than a specific sales site because they are getting library readers. They're getting Barnes and Noble and Kobo and Amazon. So I think Goodreads is always a good one to do, but providing a link or a list to everywhere your book is sold and simply saying just click and copy and paste anywhere you'd like, then there's no pressure, but there is opportunity. It's everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. All right, let's see. Are you familiar with Book Authority? I am. They listed my book as top 100 best career change books of all time. How can I take advantage of marketing or should I? Thanks for your great advice. So I would say it's a great opportunity to, put it in like a bio or something like that. Keri Barnum, the author of blah, 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 listed as Book Authority's top 100 for this. You can also do something like a social media ad or announcement saying like, wow, it's been listed here. It gives social proof and credibility to you. That is something you can, again, work into your bio. You can put it on social media graphics and share it there. You can do ads and different things like that. Um, and that is, I think, what I would do. I mean, it's just like when you win any type of award or you're nominated for something or anything, whether you are an author, a professional, we work those things into our bio. That is the credibility, the social proof and credibility of who we are and what we're selling or what we are promoting and marketing. And I would use it in that way specifically. I don't think I would necessarily like forefront it in a description, like a marketing description, but absolutely using it in ads and things like that. And congratulations, you should be very proud of that. All right, you guys. I think that was the last question that we had live, and it's right at 11 o'clock. So I'm going to let you guys go enjoy your beautiful Friday. Well, it's beautiful here. I hope it's beautiful where you're at. I'll be back next Friday, same time, same place, 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. And if you have questions, again, you can always email them to info@newshelves.com and we will answer them on Friday, time permitting. So thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.